Hello. Uh,
Well, we're live tonight, but
you're
might be
frozen.
dead tomorrow.
You're frozen.
I'm frozen again.
No.
How about now? Am I frozen now?
Yeah. No. No. You know, I'm not going to die for a long time, and unfortunately, I'm going to see all the misery.
Yeah, well, we're all living in the misery.
Ugh. Yeah, especially when I get sneezing fit, woke up to chainsaws. What a way to wake up. Just chainsaws blaring in your yard at 8 o'clock in the morning.
I told you.
What a way to wake up.
Well, they got to do their job.
They could have picked somebody else's yard first, but
Nah, they wanted to pick your yard. They want to pick on you. They don't like you.
yeah, I don't like me either.
Yep. All right. Here's one for you. You're going to be given $1 million,
Yeah.
but the catch is the person you hate the most gets $2 million. What are you going to do?
Yeah, but the person I hate the most isn't alive anymore.
Really?
Hmm.
Well, I'm taking the deal because I'm not going to give up $3 million.
How are you going to get $3 million? You get a million.
I get 1 million, and I don't hate anybody in this world more than I hate myself. So therefore, I get the other 2 million.
Oh, that's a good. Hey, I like that. You know, but see, what if the stipulation was is you couldn't do that?
No, there's nothing on there that says
I
I
got a
can.
solution to that though. Is this is say if they say you can't give it to yourself that way? What if say hating yourself is a thing you can't do?
But that's not part of the deal. That wasn't part of
Well,
the
what if
deal.
it was part of the deal? How you get around it then?
Don't know. I still get $1 million.
What the hell?
Uh,
There we go.
I have freaking eyebrow hair. It's like long, bugging me.
You keep freezing more now today than you have in other days.
Well, I don't know why.
I think it's a connection issue with Spectrum or something.
I think Spectrum has all kinds of fucking issues right now because those
Uh,
motherfuckers. I was trying to watch some streaming shit earlier, and I get 20 minutes into it and sit there, it pause on screen and sit there and just fucking do the loading circle.
the buffering.
Yep.
Yeah. Now we're having issues. He's froze again.
I'm frozen again.
Yeah, don't worry about it. As long as some people can hear you, I wouldn't give a shit.
Boom, boom, boom. There.
There, it's back. But anyway,
Yeah, I'll freeze again.
damn it. You know, you what was that? They're making a new Predator movie. You said.
Yes. It's
You
a new
know,
Predator movie. It's called Predator Badlands.
I
It
just
actually looks really good.
want to know when they are going to stop with all these damn sequels and franchises. I mean, it just proves my point that Hollywood has no imagination. I mean, you can take things too far. You know, Leprechaun is good, in my opinion, up until 3. After that, it sucks. I mean, really? Leprechaun in space? Leprechaun in the hood? I mean,
Yeah,
the break.
Leprechaun in the Hood, man.
You know, and Friday the 13th went too far. And then you got Halloween. Well, some of those were okay, you know. But 3 never made sense, so it should have never even been part of that franchise. That one should have been a standalone movie.
Oh, the Halloween 3? Yes.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with Michael Myers. It had a little of anything other than a mask manufacturer.
And then Hellraiser sucked after 2 or 3. You know, it's
Well,
just
they got Hellraiser in space, and they followed suit with the Leprechaun the same way. You got Leprechaun in
that's what I'm
space.
saying is the you know, some of these other franchises, like I can see why the Saw, because I can see why that one's made a few more than, and some of these because it just makes sense,
Hmm.
how they did it. But to make Jason or Freddy or these guys to live on forever and killing them off almost every movie, come on, it gets old.
It does.
I mean, you know, it really does.
Well, yeah, it does.
But it's like Candyman was another one that should have been left alone. It's like after a guy like Tony Todd sits there and nails a character like Candyman and makes him like, you say that everybody used to think, oh, in the 70s or 80s, you're thinking Sammy Davis Jr. because of the song. After
Hmm.
that movie came out, you say Candyman, yeah, they're thinking the guy with the hook and, from the movie. I mean, Tony Todd made that character famous, right? And
Yeah.
they should have stopped after 2 or 3. And when Tony, was done doing it, you should have never remade that movie with all new actors. That's like it being remade. You know, Tim
Dude.
Curry, Tim Curry was and is always going to be Pennywise.
Yep.
You know, that new one, a little freaky, but he's no Tim Curry.
Nope.
You know, and there's a lot of those. There's very few characters that sit there and are that iconic. You know,
Yeah, I know that. It's just
and then Hollywood's got to mess with that shit.
see that's Hollywood for you. That's how they are.
Well, that's because they got no imagination. They grew up with computers in their pockets and you know
Yeah, they
video
didn't they didn't do
video
like our
game
generation.
systems at home, and
They didn't do like our generation. Got
they
kicked.
didn't have to
Their
walk
asses
around with
kicked out the
quarters in
door.
their pocket saying, "Hey, can you pick me up?" Or collect call from so and so. Yeah, roller skating's done. And then so they
Hmm.
don't, so the charges don't get accepted. Collect call. Roller skating is done. And then they don't want to pick you up because you didn't want to spend the quarters in your pocket because those were for the video games at the roller rink. You know,
Hmm.
It's just that's the main reason, because they grew up without imagination. They didn't get kicked outside. Go outside and don't come back till dinner's ready or until the street lights outside come on. I don't want to see your face for hours. Getting kicked outside. What the fuck are we gonna do outside? Well, use your imagination.
Figure it out.
Kids nowadays, what's that? What's an imagination?
What's outside?
Uh, it's like, I got a challenge for these kids. I bet they can't last 24 hours without picking up their phone.
No, they probably can't.
We can't. I gave that challenge to my stepdaughter, Janice. She lasted an hour. She couldn't do it. It's like, huh? Me? My phone sits here about 99.9% of the day. The other 1%, it's plugged into the charger down there. The only time I actually have it with me is when I go someplace. Well, then during that time, it's mostly in my pocket. You know, I'm sitting there, I may not be driving, but I'm sitting there taking on the the scenery. I'm not sitting there with a phone in my hand. Sometimes I wish I was, though. There was plenty of times I would have loved to get pictures of some of the things I've seen out on the road.
Well, that's why you keep the phone on.
Because
That's why
Tanya
you keep
sits
the phone
there.
in your hand and you keep it on camera.
Well, she loves to take the scenic routes to some places. With GPS, you could take those scenic routes, and man, some of the stuff I saw. Or that one time I saw that huge fucking winged creature sitting on an exit sign at a big highway exit area. And it's like, what the fuck? But I'm pretty sure, I think I know it. That's not like Mothman or something like that. I'm pretty sure I know what that was. You know, because when we look, we tend to exaggerate the size of things a little bit. And when you look at those road signs that say, Wisconsin Dells this way, so biggest one probably in that area was maybe 6 feet from one end to the other. So it was all black. I'm guessing that was a turkey vulture, possibly, is what I saw.
Hmm? I think what you've seen is a turkey vulture.
That's what I said.
Hmm.
The more I looked into it, and then the more I realized what was around the area, and all the birds that are
Yeah,
native
because where
to
you guys were, I'm sorry, but where you guys were, you were really close to the dump over there.
right, exactly.
And turkey vultures are always over in that area because they're scavengers.
Right, right. That's exactly what my thoughts were after I looked into it more. You know.
I don't know. You argued with me for a while on that whenever
Well, I
I
did, but the
brought it
more I
up.
looked into it, the more I thought about it, and the more I looked at it, you know, it's like I said, I still think that these oversized wolves exist.
Mm.
Okay, and not necessarily a dire wolf, but I mean, like I said back in episodes ago, when both of them existed, because the gray wolf and the dire wolf coexisted for a while, there could have been interbreeding, interspecies breeding, or whatever you want to call that. You take a look at that gray wolf today, it's maybe, you know, distantly removed, but that doesn't mean that they can't be a little bit bigger. And some of those sightings could be just that. You know, and when they hunch up like this and look at you, because the headlights from your car is going to make those things glow at night.
Oh yeah,
Their eyes.
yeah. I know
And
that.
they're going to glow the different colors based on their eye color.
Kind
Sometimes,
of. It also depends. It's not really their eye color. It depends on whether they have the ability, like a cat, to be able to
right,
see anything. Their
right.
eyes can absorb the light more to give them that ability to see.
Well, I know myself. It also depends on the angle that you're looking at too,
Oh yeah,
because
it does.
sometimes I've noticed Joy's eye,
Mhm.
my dog's eyes, glowing like a green, and there are other times they kind of almost glow reddish. You know,
Mhm.
but you know,
Oh, that's,
start thinking more common sense, like, and some things will
well,
make
that's
sense.
the whole thing. A lot of people out there don't have common sense. In fact, right now,
Well, that's
I
that's the other thing they lack because of no imagination.
I think our nation right now is lacking common sense.
You know, I mean that's like you know some of this stuff that I hear nowadays. I never used to hear much in my day when I was out and about and working and part of the workforce and all of that. And it's like, damn, I'm glad I'm kind of in a safe spot. Yeah, no morals either. That's a good point. That's a very good point, Lori. No morals.
No, no, no. I agree with that. With her, I don't get it, man. I honestly do not get it. Okay, we've got our generation. Our generation is the Gen X generation, and I remember if I fucked up, I got to go out and pick my own switch off the tree.
Hmm.
And if I didn't pick a good enough switch when I brought it back to dad, I got whipped with that fucking switch all the way back out to the tree while he picked one for me, and then whipped me on the way back to the house with that switch that he picked for me. Now, I say this, and I'll tell you this little story about how my dad was, and any of my siblings, if they're watching, they'll try to tell you I'm full of shit, and they'll try to tell you that I got everything handed to me on a silver platter, and that I was mom and dad's favorite, and I was this and I was that. And it's like bullshit. Everything I had, everything I'd gotten, I worked for. I did chores around the house. I did
Well,
exactly
that's
what
just
mom and
it.
dad asked me to do.
That's just
And
it.
then when I got old enough, I got a job.
Everybody had chores when we were
Right.
younger.
But no,
You
I'm just
know,
saying, you ask my
um,
siblings, you ask
maybe
any of my
not the
siblings,
rich, but
no, you ask any of my siblings and they'll tell you that I had everything handed to me. And that's bullshit.
you know,
I didn't have everything handed to me. I did get a couple of things that that they didn't get because mom and dad were getting older. They were being more understanding with things. Dad was making better money because of his job, the way things were going for him. Mom was working too. I was a turnkey kid from the time I was 8 years old. I had a key to the house
that's a latchkey kid,
or a
by the
latchkey, whatever the fuck. I was a latchkey kid from the time I was 8. So I get
Yeah,
home off
you
the
have the key
bus.
to the house around your neck on a string.
Yeah. Well, I get home from school on the bus. go and unlock the door, go in, make sure everything was good, lock everything back up, and I'd sit there for about an hour and a half, and then mom would be home from work. When I was 7, I learned how to fucking cook. My mom took the time to teach me how to cook when I was 7 years old, so I wouldn't have to worry about not having anything to eat when I got home because I was going to be there by myself, type of thing. But from from the time I was 8, 9 years old, I was doing all kinds of chores, and I was carrying shit around for mom and dad, and I was taking care of stuff. I was cleaning up the backyard. Anything I got, anything I wanted, I had to buy. I had to pay for out of my own pocket.
Yeah.
So,
Howie.
you know, hey Howie. So I had to pretty much, earn what I wanted.
Well, you know, some of that, you know, others didn't have that because they didn't have both their parents either
Well, no,
growing
you see,
up.
I
I
was
mean,
I was
think
a
about it.
fortunate. I was
Right.
fortunate.
So you
Okay,
were fortunate in that
I was
aspect.
fortunate to have both parents. I was
Right.
fortunate to have a mother and a father that gave a shit and stayed together and took care of us. Right, and I know for a fact that there are those out there. In fact, here a good example
Me.
when well, not just you, but when Gina moved my ass to Wisconsin. Okay, I moved from California to here. Probably probably one of the worst things I ever did because I
Yep.
had it made out there. Honestly, I had it made out there.
Yep.
I
Worst thing you
had
ever
I
did.
had a double wide mobile home that I had completely paid off. So I had no house payments whatsoever. All I had to do is pay the taxes on it for the year and help my mom and dad out during the course of the year because it sat right next to their house on the 20 acres of land. So when Gina moved my ass out here, um, her and I, yes, we stayed together until Kayla was about 18, but we lived over on the east side of Madison there, and Kayla would always bring her friends home to spend time at our house because her almost every one of her friends came from a broken home.
Well, yeah, and that's not easy because, like you said,
I
you know,
wound up being known as dad to probably 90% of her friends.
back then there was a lot of, back in our day, there was a lot of us that were latchkey kids because either you had both parents around and both of them worked, or in my case, it was just my brother and I and mom, and she worked two jobs
Yeah,
during the week just to keep food on the table because both of us were bottomless pits,
not just that, to
you
to
know.
to take care of you guys because neither one of you were probably old enough at the time to even bother with getting anything to help out with.
Well, no, I mean, when my parents got
You know,
divorced, I was 5 years old. And I was the oldest, so you know that because Dwayne's
yep,
like 2 years younger than me.
yeah,
So he was three but he rarely, because nowadays the courts enforce this and put people in jail for it when they find them for non-payment of child support. That stuff gets court ordered now and all that stuff,
oh, I
right?
know it does.
Back then, my dad got away with not paying my mom shit. So sometimes she didn't get enough money and we were going to, food banks and stuff, you know. I mean, it was rough, but it was the three of us, you know. And but she was still pretty strict on us, and instilled some pretty good morals into us. I mean,
Yep,
we grew up respecting our mother, respecting our elders, and And those basic simple rules that everybody should grow up with. World would be in a better place, if everybody had those same morals. I
But
mean,
they don't. Okay, so you've got right now. I think what our main problem is in this country and the world is you have the elites trying to control everything. Those who have been handed everything on a silver platter, those who've had that come from money and they don't understand the hardships of trying to struggle and get by on
yeah,
what you
make it
have.
from paycheck to paycheck.
Right. So they don't see it that way. They see every one of us out there that are trying to make things happen and trying and struggling our asses off as being a drain on the system and a burden. But in reality, we're the ones that put the money in their pockets. So what would happen if we all quit on them? They'd, they wouldn't have their money.
No, they wouldn't have their slaves either.
No, they wouldn't. And that's
Yeah,
one of the reasons they dumbed down this nation like they did.
yeah. Well, we don't want to
Is
get
to
into
is
politics.
I get that, and I'm not trying to get into politics. I'm just saying that right now our world is broken.
Oh
It's
yeah,
absolutely broken, and there's not there's a lot of us out there that are trying to fix it, but there's a lot of us that don't know how. And there's not
it's
enough
been
duct
broken
tape.
for a long time.
There's not enough duct tape and crazy glue in this on this planet to fix everything.
You know,
Although it is fun to try and fix things with duct tape because duct tape is it's kind of sticky.
yeah, I like the yeah, but duct tape can't fix stupid either.
Yeah, but it's fun to try.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
That's like, with all this shit going on, it's like they need more movies that are more like the Billy Jack series. You know,
No, because they're again you getting into politics.
no, not always. I mean, he was like a hero of the Native Americans against the local law enforcement. The rich.
I get that.
In the first movie, there was a
Well,
rich guy that pretty much ran the entire town and owned the
I'll
police
say this.
department, and
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll say this. Okay, I don't think there's a lot of people on this planet that are into cannibalism, but I think we could bring some Soylent Green into the situation and use the super rich to make it.
mm,
And then we can actually say that we are truly eating the rich.
yeah.
Now we'll see how many people get that reference. Soylent Green is people.
Oh,
But no, back to what we were talking about with Hollywood and stuff. That trailer I seen. It's called Predator Badlands. It actually looks really good.
Predator Badlands.
Predator Badlands. And the predators, they don't look like the normal predators from the original movie. They actually look like a hybrid of a human and a predator.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly looking.
Well, they got stuff better than CGI now. They got AI.
Well,
Uh, I
AI
mean,
is artificial intelligence.
I know, but
CGI is computer graphic,
yeah, but
computer generated.
AI can do that too with less work.
So it's computer generated graphics.
It's just a step up from that technology. And Hollywood thinks that they can remake movies and and do sequels because we've got better technology. We can make them better, and it's like, huh?
Nah, I'll tell you right now. You know, movies movies need to quit trying to remake everything. Okay, Hollywood, not just Hollywood. Okay, you got Hollywood, you got the different companies. You got Disney, you got Paramount, you got um,
Yeah, more than we can look.
Peacock, NBC.
Yeah,
You
more
know,
than you got time to
you got
look.
Amazon's. You got Amazon has their own damn studios. Netflix has their own studios.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, but what they're doing is they're taking these older movies and they're revamping them, they're remaking them, they're
or they're,
rewriting them, they're doing stuff, and they're taking the actual storyline that
you know,
everybody remembers and they're changing it.
I think
Now
they
it's like
are
with Disney. It's like with Disney right now. Disney's taking all their animations that they got
putting them into live,
and they're making live action out of them.
and
You got
some things shouldn't be like that. You can't do the things you can do in animation in real life.
well, they're
So
making a live action Lilo and Stitch.
yeah,
And
it'll
DreamWorks is doing the same thing. They're making a live action How to Train Your Dragon.
they gotta stop. See, that's because they got no ideas.
And the whole thing is they're not even changing the scripts. They're not even flipping anything. They're not
Right.
even making any adjustments on it. They're going by the actual animation script and they're just throwing it out there as being a live action and saying, "Oh, isn't this cool? We're using CGI in a better aspect now. We got AI helping."
Yeah. It's just it's bullshit. I mean, some things, that's like some things shouldn't be redone or retold or whatever. I mean, some things, they get somebody's approval and they think, I tried watching it and it's totally different. The story is totally different. You know, so why call it what you're calling it and make a reference to the original in the first place? You know, and then they got the some of them though that turned out weren't too bad. Kind of boring after a while, but they took the Connors, and that was like a
Then they
spin-off,
redid the Connors.
and no, that was taken from, it was supposed to be a Roseanne spin-off, right?
The Connors?
Yeah. So they did that right because they got most of the original cast
Mm-hmm.
from Roseanne to be in it. So that's like an example of something that was done correctly, you know. And sometimes when you do things too late, half your original cast isn't even going to be available because they're dead and gone.
Well, yeah.
You know, I mean, when you think of these things, you should have done it right under the success of the original, so you'd have six. But nope, we're going to do things half-assed backwards. You know, it's like, look how long they came out. They should have done it right away. We all said this, but it turned out good anyways. But it could have been much better if they would have had it done, maybe 5 or 10 years after the original with the Beetlejuice thing. And now they're making a third one. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, technology's better for it, and as long as you keep like Tim Burton and all of that, you're going to keep it original then, kind of, But some of those characters couldn't come back because here it is, you know, so many years later, and a few of those members of the original cast are dead and gone.
Yeah.
You know, that's all I'm saying. They need to just continue with some of the original stuff. If they're going to make a sequel or going to do something like that, do it while some of the original cast is still alive, or most of them are. Don't wait. It's like
Yeah.
that's like WWE. The wrestling thing pisses me off sometimes. It's like if you're going to induct somebody into the Hall of Fame, at least do it while they're still alive. Don't wait until they're dead and say, "Oh yeah, we're going to induct this guy in the Hall of Fame." Why couldn't you do it after the guy retired? I mean, I understand it if they died too early, that kind of thing. But you wait until a person dies, well into his 80s or something, and then you induct him into the Hall of Fame after he passed.
Mm-hmm.
It's some of that shit's bullshit, but who knows? Maybe it'll change. Maybe it won't. No, I'm surprised nobody's come on. You must have really pissed some people off.
Yep, probably did. I told you. I'm sure I pissed everybody off. Nobody wants to come talk to us because all I ever do is piss them off. So. Anyway, so what about cars? You want to talk about cars?
Cars,
Yeah.
cars, cars.
Well, the fact that cars of our time were good cars, cars that,
Hell, I could work on cars from our time.
yeah, I could look working on them now.
I'm just saying, I could fix just about anything that was wrong with a car from, when I got my license. Back then, I also had about 3 cars, maybe sometimes 4 at once. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
buy them out of the bargain corner of the paper for $150 or less, and as long as you knew what you were doing, those things would last a couple years or more. You know, I mean, they were simple back then. You had a big area to work with. You opened it up, and you could crawl right in there with the engine to work on it. You didn't have to remove half the engine in the first place to get to things like you do now. Hell, what's his name said it best? You got to be a rocket science to fucking work on them cars today. Or a computer engineer,
Yeah.
because everything's computerized. No carburetors left in cars. No, no, everything's computerized. Yeah.
Well,
Everything's made out of fiberglass.
with the computerized stuff, I see that being a good good advancement. It's
No, I don't, because you sit there and now, I used to be able to fix my car for for whatever it would have cost me for the parts that I would have needed, right? Nowadays, I want my car fixed. It's like the parts cost a fortune, and then you got to pay a mechanic a fortune because, like I said, these cars are a bitch to work on, you know. And if you don't know what you're doing, you could seriously fuck something up.
true.
Back then, they were so simple, any idiot could have fixed the car. Well, no, maybe not. But, they were just very simple.
Well, yeah, they were simple.
You
I
know, I
mean,
went,
I was able back then. I was able to work on a damn Volkswagen. Volkswagens were the easiest goddamn engines to work on. Them, they were similar to a motorcycle engine. They were air cooled. You could take a regular Beetle Bug Volkswagen engine and it was all air cooled and it was simple as shit.
Hell, it only take a couple of buddies and 12 pack, and you carry the fucking car away.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know.
I mean, we did that to a girl in high
Well,
school. She had a Volkswagen Bug, and she was a real bitch. I mean, she pissed a lot of people off.
we
And
we
me and
buried the
me and some of the
principal's
guys,
car.
me and some of the guys, we took the we had 50-gallon drums all around the school that they used for trash cans, and we took them out into the. We literally took these drums out into the football field, and then took her car out there and set it up on those drums
Uh,
and left it there.
that's a mean joke. You know, but cars back then, even those looked cool.
Well, yeah,
You know,
Volkswagens are a cool car.
well, they don't look that. Look at what they've done to them though over the years.
Mm,
You know, and some of the cars. I mean, I wouldn't be caught dead driving a Prius. You know, or that one Cybertruck thing. You know,
yeah, you can keep your Cybertrucks.
some
Those things are
companies
pieces of
though.
crap.
I will admit, when Dodge came out with the newer Challenger and the Charger, and those cars looked
The
pretty cool.
Challenger was nice. The Charger was the one that a lot of people was expecting it to be the Challenger or look like the Challenger, but it turned out to be a totally different car than what they expected.
Right.
And that's why they did come out with the Challenger, because that
I
was
mean,
the car that everybody expected to
and the
have.
Avenger was a hot looking car too when it came out. For what it had a short run there. Like there was only like 5 years of those cars. I had one of them.
You know,
You know,
until your woman went and
but
fucking ran over a deer with it.
but those cars back, yeah, and that's the other thing. Those cars from back then, from our era generation, you know, you go and hit a deer with it, you ain't gonna total your car out either.
No, you're gonna total the deer out.
You're gonna total the deer out, and you might have to replace the bumper. Which back then, you could go to any junkyard, find an exact model with a little polishing, and if you remove it yourself, could have found a bumper for like $50 or less. Because parts were cheap, depending on the size
Mhm.
of the bumper too. You know, and also there was a lot of cars where things would, what would you call that? Like I could put a carburetor out of this car into that car. You know, they were like universal parts. You know,
Oh, they're interchangeable.
yeah. You know,
Yeah, they were interchangeable parts.
right.
They,
It's
they
like
weren't proprietary like they are now.
right. So it was like you could go to like some Buick and find a Buick that had the same body style as like the Chevy you were driving, and more than likely, if it was right around the same year, most of the parts out of that engine would interchange with the one you have.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what made things so much easier back then. But engines were simple. They didn't have all this crap that they do now. You know, I don't know how an engine works anymore. I mean, they got no carburetor.
No, it's all electronic fuel
Yeah,
injection.
everything's all computerized, and it's like shit. I don't know shit, and that sucks because back then I would have never had a mechanic bill because I was able to fix the fucker myself.
Mm-hmm.
They were so easy. I mean, there was a few things, like I didn't know where the fuel pump was in one of my cars, Somebody told me it was in the gas tank. You'd have to replace the whole gas tank. But it come to find out it was below, right under the like part of the line, right under where the driver's door was. Would have taken about, it was like a $3 part and 30 minutes of labor, and that would have been fixed. But I
Yeah.
sold the car. But at the same time, I also had two or three others because, like I said, you could any given day in the bargain corner of the Wisconsin Journal of Cap Times here. Back then, the bargain corner was full of cars $150 or under
Yeah.
because that was the rule. Anything in the bargain corner had to be, the top dollar value was $150 to list there. And you'd find more cars there than you would under used you know. And I had like three. One was yellow, and then I had two others, and I got the two others even though they ran, but I got them for spare parts. I had three Delta 88, Oldsmobile Delta 88s, all at once. One was yellow, and the other two were like an olive green color. Picked them up for $50 a piece.
Yeah. Well, we had, believe it or not, at one time, we had two Volkswagen Bugs, two Volkswagen Rabbits, a pickup truck,
Was that a lucky rabbit named Foot?
a, a Chrysler.
Was it a lucky rabbit named Foot?
Nope. Um, yeah, and then we had some junkers sitting out that Dad was taking parts off of too.
Yeah, well, I'm talking my time. Now you make me sound like I'm old enough to be your dad, bastard.
No, you're just older than dirt. That's all.
You know, I
We
had,
all know the truth, so don't even try.
how many cars did you have in your lifetime so far?
My lifetime so far,
Yeah.
my very first car I had was an '84 Buick Regal, and then I had a Spectrum, and I had a Chrysler Newport. Um, then I had a Toyota Supra. Now, are we counting cars that were registered to me or to Gina or both or what? Because we had that Beretta too. Um, and then I had a one of those K cars.
Wow. You had a lot of cars, but they were after you were married. Some of them were after you're married. I had a lot of my cars before I even got married or was
Well, the only
seriously
cars I
involved
had,
with
okay,
somebody.
actually, technically, my very first car was um, it was a 1975 Chrysler Newport.
Yeah, that's a big
Because
car.
I was 15. I was 15 years old. My dad bought it for $500 and put it in mine and my mom's name.
That was a big boat.
Yeah, this thing had that big 440 big block in it, and it had it was maroon in color, and it had all leather interior, and it was a freaking boat. Yes, but it was
My,
cool.
my first
I
car
love
was
the car.
my first car was a 1973 Lincoln Continental Mark IV
Then I had the '84
with a big old
Regal,
460 in it.
and I had the Regal before I got married. Before I met Gina, that was the one I had when I was with you. Oh, and I also had a '62 Volkswagen Bug that was Baha'd out, which I helped my brother rebuild. And he traded me that Volkswagen Bug for my '86 Honda 250 Enduro that I had.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, that'd be no good here.
Huh?
That would be no good here.
What wouldn't?
The Baja Bug.
Yeah, it would. In wintertime, it'd sit in my garage. And then I'd drive it during the summertime.
No, what I'm saying is, there's, out in California and
Dude,
that
it
West Coast
was it
area,
was called a Baja Bug. Okay.
you
It
had
had a
all the
fiberglass
desert
front
area
end.
that you could fly around in.
No, that isn't that. It had a fiberglass front end. So we put the slightly shorter, more sloped front end on it, and then we took the back engine the engine cover completely off. So that's how it was, and that's what it was called, a Baja. Wasn't necessarily open like a dune buggy.
No, but see, you're no fucking fun. You know, the only thing I never owned was a bike or a truck.
I owned a bike. I owned a truck. I
Well,
had
a pick.
I
I
had
should
two
say
pickup trucks.
I never owned a pickup truck. But I had all kinds of other vehicles. Never had the muscle car until the Avenger, but that kind of, oh well.
Um, no, you had a muscle car. That
No,
Lincoln that Lincoln could have been considered a muscle car
oh,
because
yeah,
of
I
its
guess it
design.
could have.
Yeah.
That sucker could have gotten me in trouble too.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to, because again, I won't mention the last name, but you know, I had a friend with me, and we were sitting on the top of East Wash at the lights, and at that time of night, it's like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. That was the only set of lights that was functioning. The others were all flashing yellow, pretty much. You know, and it was like these guys come up and they were like revving their engine in their Porsche and all of this, and they were
Mm-hmm.
just sitting there and revving it and laughing. They probably were drunk too at the same time, you
Wouldn't
know.
doubt it.
And my buddy looks off and he says, "You can't. There's nothing you can do." I says, "Why not?" And he says, "This ain't got no get up and go." And it had a lot of get up and go because it had a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, the engine had just been tuned up. And man, I got down there and to that Fiore shopping center in the parking lot, and I was just parking my car, and they just passed the first street lights. I think they probably slowed down at Blair Street because that was the other light that was working. But when I hit it, it was still green. So the ones at Blair, because from almost the top of the square to First and East Wash, which would have been the next set of major lights that would have been working. All those other
Mm-hmm.
lights were flashing yellow, and I think the Blair lights were still working too at that hour.
Yeah, you probably blew right through them, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I got down there, and just as I got to them, I didn't have to slow down because they were turning green before I got within 20, 30 feet of them, and boom. And they don't last long at that time of night. They go, green. 30 seconds later, and this guy was probably still shifting in third or second or whatever he was doing. Probably stripped the gears too. They were just a couple of young kids, looked like they were having fun in daddy's car.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that back then. You know, I remember going to high school, and you get all these kids with car permits to park in the student parking lot, and you go back in the student parking lot. Yeah, there's some cool tricked out cars, but you can obviously tell which ones had the parents buy their cars for them or which one's driving daddy's car. And going to school at La Follette at that time, you had a lot of rich kids there. So you had like those higher end 30, $40,000 cars.
Mm-hmm.
That would be value that value in the 80s. So you're talking Porsches, BMWs, those kind of cars. So there was quite a few of them in the student lot.
Yeah.
And then you see the ones with the pickup trucks and the old cars from the 60s that look like they're getting worked on. Those are the guys that were like probably bought their car from whatever job they had after school, and they're working on trying to restore it.
Yeah.
Those were the cooler cars in the parking lot. But a lot of them back then, there was a lot of kids driving around with because they were rich kids with lots of money, and daddy bought them a new car for graduation.
Yep.
And it was a BMW or a Mercedes it's like if I wanted my dad to buy me a car, it's like give me a Dodge Charger or Grand Prix or
Yep.
anything from that era,
1970 Dodge Charger 500.
or a Monte Carlo or Buick Skylark, anything but those foreign pieces of crap.
Dodge Charger 500.
It's like, oh, that's what it's really like being born with a silver spoon in your mouth. I'm getting
Yep.
tired. I'm getting tired. It's time
Well,
to end this.
we can end it. We don't
Um,
have to do a full 2 hours like we normally do.
I don't know why nobody comes on our answers anymore, but next week we'll see if we'll be here or not.
Yeah. I don't know about tomorrow because I showed up last Friday, but nobody said anything, and there was nothing
Yeah,
else.
I don't know about tomorrow either.
We don't have to have a guest or anything. We can just come on and talk.
We gotta have a topic.
Hell, I can play with tarot cards and do tarot readings if you want.
Oh, you can do that by yourself.
Whatever.
Oh. Anyway, stay safe. Remember, anything's
Yeah, have
possible.
fun.
Thanks for watching, those who did.
Yep. Later.